Alice, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. This is what we call Norms Unleashed. It's an opportunity for us to show our students and our parents around the world that there are opportunities that are maybe a little bit outside the norm. And I'm not sure I have interviewed any university that is more outside the norm than this.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm not surprised. But yeah, I hope to be able to give some insightful information on what we do. And yes, it's definitely not your average university degree program.
No, it doesn't seem like it. And the first thing on a Monday morning during winter break, we're going to try to make this happen. We're going to try to help people understand a little bit about what's outside the box. Welcome. We're gonna do a welcome to the learning revolution. I'm going to learn a whole lot because I don't know that much, but I know my students are interested. So,
well, I'll go ahead and give you a full presentation, but feel free to interrupt me at points or ask any questions that you might have.
Okay.
If you like. Okay, so the degree program in itself is called Entrepreneurial Leadership and Innovation. And I always say here, yes, those are quite big words. What does that actually mean? It's very similar to an international business program, but instead of being sat in a classroom learning each subject, under each subject, there are different objectives, which are business objectives and learning objectives that the students have to get to. So in essence, the students have to build their own business from scratch. And it's a real business. It's a junior association, so there is zero liability. So they are protected in that sense. But yeah, so they create their own company in multicultural teams, and they travel to a different location each year. So the first year they go to Bilbao, in the north of Spain, and the second year they go to Berlin in Germany, and then the third year they go to Seoul in South Korea. And then for their fourth year, that's when they would do their dissertation project. So they can do this either in a startup that they've been creating during the program, or they can do an internship within another company. So they can choose wherever they would like to do this in the world, and we tutor them online. So this last year is meant to act as a springboard into what they want to do next. Instead of okay, I finished my studies, what am I going to do? They've actually had 3 years plus 4, depending on the person, experience in building their own company and learning how to do that.
Thanks, Alice. Quick question on that. You said they're part of global teams. That's the team of other students that they start with, the cohort that they're starting with. And is there thought that can change, or is there thought that more these are the co-founders and they've got to work through their own troubles together? Because 18-year-olds are going to have their own struggles against one another and ideas, just like co-founders of companies do. But co-founders of companies aren't part of a junior association. They're part of an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp, and they've invested time, energy, and money in this. So they work through and have resilience through those issues for their business. How do you foresee that happening with the students?
Yeah, I think one of the big differences between this program and other programs is that they have one team of between 10 to 15 people, and they work together to build the company, and they're with the same team during the whole process, during the first 3 years and before they do their dissertation project. So the idea is that, yes, it will force these conflicts to come out. It's not like they can say, oh, I'm just working on this project with this person, I'm not getting on with them, but next month I'm going to change teams, so it doesn't matter, I'll just let it roll, I'll just brush it under the rug. They actually have to learn how to deal with their conflicts because they're going to be with the same team for the next 3 years. That doesn't mean to say that they don't collaborate with people from other teams. So they have one company, or one entity, but they do collaborate with other students or other people who have other specialities as well to run their projects.
Cool.
One of the key questions that I get all the time is, okay, so if they're not sat in classrooms, how are they learning?
Who primarily asks you that question? Counselors, teachers, parents, or students?
I'd say parents. I'd say more parents and counselors. I don't think the students ask me this question so often. They see the practical element in the degree program, the practical elements in the center, and the theory that they learn is to support the practical element. But because I think perhaps parents and school counselors are thinking more on the lines of, okay, but how can I relate this to another university program? So like, how can this be validated? Or how can I put this in a box that I understand? I think that's perhaps that's how our mind works as humans anyway, right? How can I put it into something, or how can I categorize?
That's my issue. My mind doesn't work that way.
Yeah. But I can understand that a lot of people's minds do, because that's how
100%.
That's how we're taught to function. But in this program, it's very much based on a theory called the Knowledge Creating Company by Nonaka and Takeuchi, two people from Japan. So they speak about combining tacit and explicit learning, so that more experiential and more theory-based learning. So, like, to give you an example, let's say the students needed to make a marketing plan. So first, they would read a book about marketing, read an article, listen to a podcast, speak to a marketing director. Then they would gather that information in an essay, and then they would share that essay with the team and perhaps do a couple of activities. Then the rest of the team would put more knowledge into their common knowledge pot about marketing, and then they would create a marketing plan. And then they would put that marketing plan into action in the projects that they're doing, into the work that they're doing in their company, and then they reflect on how it went. And then they'll probably read a bit more and read more articles and books and listen to another podcast and interview somebody else. So you've got that combination of knowledge, and then so they share that, how they've combined that new knowledge together. Then make a new marketing plan, put that into place. And then the cycle goes, and then it's called a knowledge spiral. So that continues, and it can translate to marketing or leadership skills, or how to create a mission, vision, and values, or basically anything. So that's kind of the basis of how we learn on the program.
Cool.
Another really important thing on the program is the leadership of your own learning. So how do you become the owner of what you're learning? So as I mentioned before, yes, there are different objectives underneath each subject, but the students have to strategize together on how they're going to get to those objectives, and like the way they're going to do that. So for example, they have to read X amount of books per year, but the books that they read is up to them. So they have to think together as a team on, okay, so what kind of learnings do we need this month? We need to learn something on leadership, or we need to know how to create a customer relationship management tool that works efficiently, or we need to work on our sales or work on finance. So each person takes one knowledge pill, let's say, knowledge area, and they study that area and come back and share that knowledge with the team. So they're strategizing together on how to create new knowledge within their team. So this doesn't just happen with books, but it also happens with customers. So we speak about who is our target customer? Who are we creating projects for? Because we're also trying to it doesn't always happen, especially in the first years, but the idea is that we're creating entrepreneurial projects that cover a need. So it's something that has more of a purpose, let's say.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So another one of our pillars is international training. So as I mentioned before, our teams are multicultural, which I imagine for a school like yours, this is nothing new, as everybody is in an international environment. But I'm sure you've seen cases where culture differences lead to conflict.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So. So
at this point, Yeah,
Mhm.
because for my school, we're at 450 students from 70 different nationalities already. We're oftentimes more diverse than many universities that our students consider. Um, but what do you see? Where do you see which like culture? I mean, which culture do you see as like the primary target? Not target for your university, but I guess which group of students have found the most interest right now, and is this internationalization of your school seeming to be an issue? I would think no. I would think that you're probably having a few people in every place that you go that see this and value it, and because you're only having a few people in every place you go, you're naturally creating curious, international minded, leading entrepreneurial minds, because this is not attracting just like a homogenous seeking basic person.
Exactly. A lot of our students are from international backgrounds, and I would say that in the past we have had more students from countries like Spain, for example, because where the methodology originated here, or South Korea, because there's also a fixed lab in South Korea that has been going for quite a while. So I would say that we've had more quantity of students from those two locations, but apart from that, it's very international. And the people who come from those two locations are also people who have done a year in the States, or I know that there's a student who's from South Korea who lived half of his life in Thailand. So it's not like, so yes, there has been in the past some dominance in those two locations. But the profiles are also, the people from those two locations are also very diverse. So they're not people who have stayed in the country, if you know what I mean, for their whole life. So there are lots of those kinds of cases of students who have some sort of international, have done some sort of international program, or whose parents are from different nationalities. So quite a lot of third culture kids. So yes, but apart from that, quite diverse, I would say, and ever more. I mean, we're always moving into different focus countries also, to learn more about different cultures and how those different cultures work together in multicultural teams.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll explain a bit more about what a week in the life is for our students, because I think this clarifies a lot of questions. As I mentioned before, there aren't classes per se, but there are two spaces where the students gather with a team coach, which I'll talk about a little bit more about in a minute. And they are called training sessions. So these sessions are run by the students and they are designed by the students, and they're a space for sharing knowledge, for talking about strategy, setting objectives for the next week and going over objectives from the last week, for example, resolving conflicts, talking about soft skills, working on things like mission, vision, values. Basically, it's a space where the students organize themselves, get organized to get to their objectives, but they also speak, do some critical thinking, or have a space to share and create new knowledge through dialogue. There's also 4 leaders in each team. So there's a team leader, a communications leader, a customer leader, and a financial leader. And those 4 people get together at the beginning of the week with the team coach to talk strategy, because the people who are leading the team are the team leaders, not the team coach. So what's the role of the team coach, right? So the team coach is a person who, like you would imagine, a business coach. So somebody who mentors entrepreneurial projects, but that team coach also mentors and coaches soft skills, team working, or how do we work agilely as a team, and asking questions so that the team starts to reflect in different ways. So sometimes the team coach will give a vision of a direct pathway, let's say.
Okay.
But usually the team coach will be in in a role of suggesting or asking questions so that the students will reflect on what they need to do next. So the decision is ultimately the students to take.
So you have the 4 team leaders, and then you have the team coach.
Yeah,
And then you have roughly anywhere from probably 1 to 8 teammates.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. The students also have different consultants, which we call experts, in legal, finance, and emerging technologies. So those 3 experts mentor the projects, and they come into the training sessions. And it's also what I would say is most, let's say, similar to a degree program that would be online, because in those 3 subjects, there are online modules to help the students along, because part of legal, for example, is constituting a company. So there are certain theoretical steps that the students would have to take. So in those 3 topics, there are modules online, and then they have to hand in evidences that it's kind of like evidence that they know that knowledge. So this is usually putting the knowledge that they have learned through the online modules into their company, like into practice in their company, like writing a collaboration contract or doing their taxes or things like this. And then the rest of the week is up to the students to organize themselves. So they might set some time to read together because they're having trouble finding the discipline in themselves to read every day, or they might go to customer visits or have a project meeting, or they might develop a project, or go into the makerspace and do some 3D printing to prototype on a product that they're making. So the rest of the week, they organize themselves to get to the objectives that they've set themselves.
Cool.
So that's basically the week. Now, the degree program in itself is accredited by Mondragon University. It's managed by Traveling U, which is where I'm from, and we're part of a bigger community, which is called Mondragon Team Academy, or MTA. So the degree program is delivered in different formats and in different languages all over the world. So in Spain, there's a local format of the degree in 8 locations, and in Seoul, there's the degree program is in Korean, and then in Mexico, it's also in Spanish. So there are different companies that work together with the university to deliver the program in different locations and in different formats.
Okay, interesting.
This is what our labs look like. So another big question that I get is, so where are the students studying? So what's their actually the location? What does it look like? So you'll see here that it doesn't look like your average university campus. It's more like we call them innovation labs. So there'll be like a co-working space, like you can see in the Bilbao lab, or an event space like you can see here in the Berlin lab, or usually a cafe or some sort of like informal space like you can see here in the Seoul lab. There's also different meeting rooms. So the students are also surrounded by that startup energy. So there are other people who are working on their startups also in the same building as the students. So it's kind of like very fake it till you make it kind of attitude of, well, it's fake it till you make it, but it's not really faking it because they do actually have their own company. So these are the different people who are the different teams that are accompanying the learning process. I already spoke about the team coaches and the experts, but there are also business mentors that come in the 3rd and 4th year of the program itself. So within the degree program, apart from the objectives that the students have to get to, in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, and in the 1st year actually, there are different boot camps. So in the 1st year, as you would imagine, the students arrive and they don't know how to put together a business or how to create an entrepreneurial project or how to work together. So the first 2 weeks are more boot camp style, and they're more led by the team coaches. So how to create your first project from a need, or how to have those first conversations about troubles that you're having within the team, things like this. So that's the boot camp in the 1st year. In the 2nd year, it's very based on design thinking. In the third year, it's an impact startup program, so kind of like an accelerator program. And then in the fourth year, depending on whether the students decide to do, if the students decide to go down the path of doing their dissertation project in the startup, in more the startup scene, then they go through an incubation process, and if not, they go through more of a program on entrepreneurship. So each year is accompanied by a boot camp plus what the other things that they have to do within their company to keep it running. So another question I get is our year. So we do run from September to June, but they're running a business. So sometimes the students work through the summer because they're running a business. So there are some things that have to keep on going. So depending on the team, yes, there are some, we do have academic dates, but depending on the team, the students won't stop working.
That makes sense to me. That actually leads to a question that I have from a macro lens for, I guess, Mondragon, Leinn, the Traveling U.
Mm-hmm.
Right, all of it is a group of students driven, a group of students cohesive, a group of students with a plan and insight and an entrepreneurial spirit might very well find a business that takes some form of success quite early.
Mm-hmm.
What's the, I guess, besides the desire to spend a year in Berlin and a year in Seoul together, what's the impetus of the student and the company that they create to not just end at year one once they find initial success and go off on their own? Obviously, without going through the full study plan, they won't have such great success long term. But well, I say that tongue in cheek because of course they can, but ideally they go through the whole plan. Is the Traveling U, is it Leinn International? Leinn?
So Leinn International is the name of the program itself, because it was developed in Spain. In Spanish, it's leadership, entrepreneurship, innovation, and that's why it's kind of like it's an abbreviation.
Leadership, entrepreneurship, innovation. Perfect. Leinn, is there ownership of companies by Mondragon? Is because it's essentially you're the VC to these companies? How does that work? This is very practical and probably not something that's normal question, but I don't know.
No, I mean, it's not something. Going to the first question, it's not something that's ever happened to students having success and saying, okay, see you later, and leaving after the first year. It hasn't. It's not something that has happened. They have had success in the first and second year, but I believe that they see the value in the program and continue. I think that's why they continue. They're also part of a close-knit team, and they have a co-responsibility with their team, with their teammates to run their company. So it's not just one project. I would like to think it's because they feel responsibility to their teammates and to their team coaches who spend their time and energy with them. Because we're not like a 9-to-5 teacher, and at 5 o'clock we switch out and we're off. It's a really holistic process, and we have a personal relationship, like a one-on-one relationship with each student, not like in a big classroom. So for that reason, we haven't had anybody not continue with the program. As to ownership, the students have 100% ownership on their process and their company. Mondragon University doesn't own the companies, and all of the money that the students invoice, all of the funds that they invoice into their company, the students decide where they would like to invest that within their company, where they can also use those funds to pay for their expenses, so their company expenses. Things like they can expense travel start to expense things like coffees with clients and things like this. Or they can decide to invest that within another company. So the university doesn't have any ownership over the companies.
Cool.
Uh-huh.
That's good. I mean, a lot of innovation, a lot of universities, a lot of colleges that have seed money, then they're essentially creating little side businesses for themselves as a university.
Yeah, no, it's not our objective. The person who's the founder of the program was very inspired by the man who planted trees. Now, I don't know if you know this theory, and I honestly have to tell you that I haven't read the book, but from hearing, I can tell you the theory from him telling it to me. And his ideal is to go to different, I would say, like visit different collectives and inspire other people to be entrepreneurs in teams for good. And if they're inspired by that, then it's time. He plants the seed, and then it's their thing to roll with it. He's not an owner of it. Rather, he's just inspired by other people being inspired by his work, or him working in a team and creating meaningful entrepreneurial projects.
I'm aligned with that theory. I guess I should pick up the book and then join you in trying to find the self-discipline to read it.
Right. It's a thing. Self-discipline is a very big thing that we work on with the students.
Yeah, 100%.
Self-leadership. We've had 9 generations in the international route. There's been 17. The degree program in itself has been going for 17 years in its local route. And it's actually inspired by Team Academia in Finland, and they've just had its 30th anniversary. So although it sounds like a very innovative idea, and it still is in a lot of areas, this kind of program has actually been going for 30 years in Finland. The Finnish, they are always ahead of us. We've had 147 laners go through just the international route. Then locally, there are lots of different students, of course, and 31 nationalities so far and counting. And then I would usually go on to speak a little bit about the students who have come out of the program. Do you have any other questions about the program itself before I speak about about alumni?
What the actual degree from Mondragon is a bachelor's in entrepreneur. Okay.
Yeah, in entrepreneurial leadership and innovation.
Okay.
It's from Mondragon, and the graduation ceremony is in the Basque Country in the north of Spain.
Oh, lovely.
And when the students graduate, fun fact, they get a chapela, which is very similar to like a beret, like a French beret.
Yeah.
But instead of wearing it on the side, you wear it forward.
In front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a celebration. Instead of a graduation cap, it's a chapela.
A chapela.
Yeah. For
and how many students are at the Mondragon campus for Mondragon University?
You know what? I don't know.
Cool. Perfect.
I've been asked this question various times lately, and I don't actually know, but I can look it up and let you know.
Presumably, then the Leinn International students spend very little time at Mondragon.
They spend their first year.
Okay.
In Mondragon, yeah. So the year that they spend in Bilbao, they spend in a building which is called the Bilbao Innovation Factory, and they're mixed also with the students who are on the local route of the degree program here. Okay. So yes, it's a university building, let's say, but again, as I was mentioning before about the locations, it has the same kind of startup feel, and other companies are here as well working and have their offices here.
Awesome. So they're able to see the local route of doing the same program that they're doing. What's the attrition from the international to the local, or from the local to the international teams?
What's the tuition, did you say?
Sorry, attrition, meaning, hey, I'm in Bilbao. Actually, I just like this local team. I don't need to go to do the international bit. Can I switch to the local, and vice versa? The local, like, oh, I didn't realize I could do this international.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay.
The teams are going also through they're going through a team process. So we don't accept exchange students, and the students can't go on exchanges because they're going through a team process and they're building trust, and that takes time. And that's something that they're learning how to work on in a team. And that's why that's not something that's allowed.
Yeah, well, and your options of a company don't vest until after 4 years typically. So I'm sure that there's that aspect of being part of the team as well. You're starting to create something, but you don't really have ownership necessarily right away, depending on how they build out their businesses.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, tell me about Ashkit and Julian.
Okay, so Astrid is the regional manager of the Startup Investor Accelerator. So Astrid is from Armenia, and these two students are actually part of the first generation. So they're our first graduates on the program. Astrid was actually part of the creation of the Startup Investor Accelerator. She currently lives in Barcelona and is still working on the project. The accelerator, the association, the company itself, creates a playground for startup founders and angel investors to learn how to do their roles, basically, how to carry out their roles. So they teach angel investors how to become angel investors, and what questions to ask, let's say, before investing. And for the startup founders, they're teaching them what questions the angel investors are going to ask and making sure that they're ready for that stage. So they run lots of different conferences and different events for like educational events for each one of these parties, but also events so that they get to know each other.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. Julen has actually just been in Forbes 30 under 30 in Spain this year, so very happy about that. Him and his team started out importing scented phone cases from Shanghai, so not super sustainable, but they did manage to get a deal with the phone house. So, but anyway, after that, they at one point they decided, hang on a minute, we don't want to put more plastic into the world, rather we want to take plastic out of the world. So now their mission is plastic-free oceans, and that's exactly what they do. So they've been working, they basically collect fishing nets and plastic out of the ocean and create different things with it. So they work with town halls to create benches out of recycled plastic, or different objects within the city out of recycled plastic. They've worked on the new mini with recycled plastic elements. Okay. They've also been working with L'Oreal to create plastic pallets. So, and different furniture companies, so that part of the furniture can be kind of like a mix between wood and this recycled plastic. So that's what they've been working on at the moment. And this year they have also had $500,000 invested in their company. So, nice. So they're doing pretty well. I mean, there are lots of different cases, like for example, Ivy. And just to put it, so the gravity wave, the project of Julen, was his dissertation project. And this is the case of Ivy as well. Ginkgo Africa was her dissertation project. So her and one of her colleagues from the Basque Country actually went back to Ivy's hometown, and this was actually during COVID, when she realized that there was a rise in teen pregnancy during COVID. And when women became pregnant, they dropped out of school. So they weren't able to continue with their education. So IB has created this association to help those women to continue with their education. And more than anything, she focuses on entrepreneurial education. So that, so that these women can have, create work for themselves and have their own income. So yeah, there are lots of different cases, like Robert, for example, has gone into real estate, or Nicole here created and has also been in Forbes actually, and created an application called The Good Goal, which is about how companies can track their impact, the impact that they're having. So there are lots of different cases. So there are people also, like, for example, you can see Robert's gone into real estate. So he's using his entrepreneurial skills, but in, let's say, it's still you can be an entrepreneur for me in any kind of field, but let's say it's more of a normal job. So students do go more into a traditional route sometimes after the program. So yeah, this is a little bit about where the students have been. We have a very high employability and employment rate after graduation, which is 97%. And I believe it's because that last year really springboards the students into what they want to do next. Like, for example, the case of Julen or the case of Ivy, who have continued with the project that they had been building during the program. And other students who do an internship for their dissertation project. Also, a lot of them stay in the places where they have done their internship. So, I mean, also the fact of, as I was saying before, having run their own company for 3 years is very, gives you some really invaluable skills, I would say.
For sure.
So getting down to numbers more. So the tuition fee for the program is €10,850 per year, and that includes the flights from the student's hometown to the first 3 locations. So in the case of Bilbao, for example, it would be from their hometown to Bilbao in September, and then from Bilbao back to their hometown in June.
Really?
3 years, yeah. Accommodation is separate, and these other things that are mentioned on this page are separate, which is why we like to mention them so that families can properly budget for the program. So this family would still need to think about insurance, visa, accommodation, and living expenses apart from this. At the moment, we don't have any scholarships that we're giving out, but we do offer the chance for the students to have apply for a loan on their tuition fees. So this works kind of like, it would be kind of like financing the program. So instead of paying for the program in 4 years, the students would pay for the program in 5, 6, 7, up to 10 years. So hopefully the monthly payments would be more affordable.
Cool. Makes sense.
Okay. Admissions wise, as far as requirements go, we of course do require the students to have some sort of high school diploma, but we don't ask for certain marks or subjects because, like, as you've gathered, the program isn't a class exam kind of degree program. So we have our own admissions process, which mirrors a little bit more the activities that the students will be doing on the program. So we ask them to prepare 3 assignments and then we interview them. So it's like a personal statement, a reflection paper on the future, and an entrepreneurial project idea. But there's of course a longer explanation of what these different assignments are, which I can of course send through. And then once the students have handed those in, we would interview them.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, that's about it. Our next application deadline is February 7th. And then there are a couple of other deadlines in case students would like to apply a little bit later. But yeah, that's all of the information. But if you have any other questions about the students or about how they get along. Any other general questions?
If they're in different are they in different accommodation, right?
Yes.
So,
So
and that accommodation is with the local students, typically at Mondragon in Bilbao in the first year, and then in Berlin is just wherever you can find in Berlin, or how does that work out?
Yeah, for each one of the locations, we give the students a guide of where they can look for accommodation or where we would suggest. So this is everything from different dorms or like where to search for shared apartments, and which neighborhoods that we suggest they live in each city as well. So it's ultimately their decision, but we of course give them some guidance along the way.
Cool. What's the type of student, and how do they know they're the type of student that should consider this type of program?
I would say most of our students are. I get this question a lot, and it's very difficult to answer because
It's very difficult to answer.
It's very difficult to answer for a program like this because we're looking for people who are very diverse. Because in the best teams are the most diverse teams. I would say we're definitely looking for students who thrive in a practical environment, who aren't looking for their classic university degree, but they would like to have a university degree because it's very important later in life. People who are looking for a bit more of an adventure, and who are willing to work hard because it's not an easy degree. Just because the students don't have classes or exams doesn't mean that the program isn't difficult, especially because some of their indicators depend on external factors. So invoicing a certain amount of funds is part of their degree program, but for that to happen, they have to have spoke to X amount of clients. And so it's more complex than just reading and studying and putting that on paper. I mean, depending on how you learn, of course, because if you thrive in a practical environment, then it's more appropriate for you, I would say.
Are there individual assessments in addition to team assessments that the coach or the experts weigh in on in order for a kid to obtain the necessary qualifications to have shown Mondragon that they can wear the hat?
The team coaches are in the evaluations. So 70% of the mark of the student is a team mark and 30% is an individual mark. But all of the team has to agree on the individual marks that each person gives themselves. The team coach is there within the evaluations to make sure that there is some order, of course, in this, but the students ultimately decide on their marks. But again, it's controlled by the team coach as well. So the team coach will bring other things up, or will ask questions about why they believe that that's their mark, and what evidences can you show me that would suggest that this is your mark.
Cool.
Yeah, the evaluation is first like a 360 feedback. Then we go over the objectives that the team have set themselves, and the objectives that are set by Mondragon. And after that, they have an exercise of envisioning the future. So it's very much like a setting of a business review, let's say.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, we're teaching the students to be critical with themselves and with their teammates, and to also be able to tell their teammates the truth about what they believe is their mark or what their performance has been. Not to be mean in any way, but rather each person is invested in the other person's growth. And I wouldn't be invested in your growth if I didn't tell you where you could improve.
No, that makes sense to me. And the fact that you have to work together as a team to build out this business means that you can't wait 6 months to do this 360. I'm guessing. How often does this 360 happening? Because for me, it should happen almost weekly the way this program is built out. Like every Monday, you're essentially having a team meeting.
It does happen every 6 weeks, but we encourage the students not to save their grudges for those moments. Rather, they should be learning how to get their conflict out in the open. But it also takes time.
It does take time, for sure. Okay, so that's 360 happens every 6 weeks, which means
6 months.
6 months. Sorry, 6 months. Okay, so there's once or twice a year for the team to really evaluate their own grade or mark for their completion of the program. Okay,
Exactly.
do the experts or the coaches, I guess not the experts, but do the coaches travel with the team, or do they get a new coach in every city, or do they just harken back and call their Bilbao coach when they're in Berlin, and do they call their Berlin coach when they're starting in Bilbao because that's where their coach is based?
There are coaches in each city, so the teams change coach each year. They, of course, they need a different thing from their coach each year, apart from the fact that if a coach is in a fixed location, they also get more local knowledge because the team coach has been living in that city. So we believe that that's the way. Before, when the program started out, the team coaches did used to travel with the students, and there was the original model and the local model is one team coach per team for the 4 years. But in the international route, we change coach each year due to the culture, and also we believe that the students need a different thing each year. So in the first and second year, they do need the business side, but they also need a team coach who is very in touch with the soft skills and how to build a team in a multicultural environment. Whereas in the third and fourth year, it's a lot more business focused.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Makes sense. Is there any reason in the future, if you think ahead, to have the first year be able to start in any of the 3 locations? It'd be harder because the parent university is in Bilbao.
We could actually, before the pandemic, the degree program used to start in Shanghai before the pandemic. So it's not out of the question that in the future the first year could change. Right now, this is the set itinerary, and we believe that it needs to be set. It needs to be set because the team coaches have the local experience in each one of those locations, and I think that does add value to the program. I suppose you're talking about changing from the locations that we already have, not going to new locations.
No, I was actually thinking the impetus for this question was your statement about the coach, having the soft skills to build the multicultural team. Mm-hmm. And while I'm sure you could write a paper about why coaches based in Bilbao are stronger and better suited for that, I could also imagine certain coaches in Korea or in Berlin that are actually more suited to help build a cohesive unit of multicultural, multinational 18-year-olds than per se be the business coach that they need to be in years 2 and 3. And so I could see possibly one of the better coaching opportunities is to have the team start in different locations to utilize the strengths of those coaches.
Yeah, could be. It could be.
That was yeah.
I understand your question. At the moment, it's not on the cards at the moment, but the coach isn't necessarily from the location, rather the coach has been living in that location. So it's not at the moment, the team coach of the first year is from the Basque Country, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be like that. So one of the Korean coaches could that has spent some time in the Basque Country could also coach in the first year, come to Bilbao and coach in the first year. They'd have to have some local knowledge, of course, or be supported by the Basque team of team coaches as well. But I believe you're correct. Like for example, the reflections or the metaphors that I'm not saying that from Europe, this is something that we can't do, but I've heard a lot more of this, of metaphors and soft coaching, let's say, from Korean team coaches or from Chinese team coaches. I've heard that. I have felt that as well.
Yeah.
It depends on the person as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's all team dependent, and oftentimes you'll have business coaches who don't realize they're really good at that because that hasn't been what they did, because that's not what they needed to do for 22, 24, 26-year-olds. But actually with 18-year-olds, they're really good at that. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know they were really good at that because their job had been to work with graduates of university, not graduates of high school. And now they're working with year 3 students in university, which is similar to what they had been working with. But they're finding a new passion, per se, as they get older, as they get wiser, as they have done it in different ways and seen different approaches. So that was more of my thought question there, is building out the leadership, but also aligning the leader with the task.
Yeah. Yes. Very possible as well. I agree. It's not necessarily, but I think that it's not necessarily, yes, it's about the culture of the person, but also it depends on the person themselves and their character, them personally and their characteristics.
Yeah. You did not participate in this program.
I didn't. If I'd have known, I would have done that.
Of course.
I've been a team coach on the program, and I also led the founding of our Berlin team and our Berlin lab. Now, I'm not based there right now. I'm back in Bilbao, but Berlin is also a bit of my specialty.
Okay. Wonderful. So I haven't yet made it to Berlin. So when I do, I'll make sure I reach out.
Do please do.
Yeah. A lot of the interesting on the Norms Unleashed, a lot of the questions that we ask, I'm running through my head. They actually don't work in this abnormal of a setting. Like, talking about specific professors. Well, you don't really have specific professors. You have a coach and a business expert, but I guess within that, like, how do the students, I mean, the question's actually to you. Typically, it's who's one of the business coaches or one of the business experts that you yourself would want to go out and have a weekend of like learning from.
Okay. Who is one of the business coaches? You mean like the business experts or team coach?
Either the team coach or the business experts. Who's one, Alice, that you would say, I want a weekend to just like learn from and engage with you?
I'd say for me, it's very difficult. It's difficult because each team coach and each business mentor gives you something different. So I would go to somebody different for different things. Like if out of that weekend I needed somebody to really motivate me, I would go to my colleague Mayalin. And Mayalin is the team coach of the first year, and she is somebody who's really empathetic, but at the same time she's like, I feel you, but at the same time you need to do this, and I feel you, but no excuses at the same time. Let's go, let's start moving. And she's very like firecracker, like boom, boom, boom. Like, now, if I needed some more strategical advice on how to lead and move my team, or how to create a session on something within my team, then I would go to my colleague Kaisu, because Kaisu is Finnish. And she is more, I would say, she's more paused, and she's very good at asking the questions that make you reflect and bring you like a further up, let's say, like have more of a wider vision of what you're doing. So I'd go to Kaisu for that. Now, if I was pitching to an investor, I would ask Martin, because Martin is actually one of our first graduates on the program, and him and his team built a electric motorcycle company, and they had various investment rounds, and they have done a lot of pitching to investors. So if I had to go and pitch to an investor, then I would ask him, like, what do I need? Like, where am I missing? What am I going to be asked? So I would go to different people for different things.
Cool. Love it. Where's the best food on campus is one of the questions. We can't ask that question. It doesn't like, there's not really camp. I mean, Bilbao, you have so many different restaurants.
It's very different, because in Bilbao, I would go to, there's a tortilla de patatas, like a potato omelet. That's amazing, right by the lab here in Bilbao. But for me, the big experience was Korea, because I'd never been to Asia before I went to Korea. So the food there was like mind-blowing anywhere you went.
Yep, doesn't matter do you eat meat too? Because if you eat meat, the Korean barbecues, you cannot beat it.
You can't beat that. Like, for me, there's no competition. I would choose Korea, but only because, I mean, it's so different from what we're used to here. So sure. And how are you with soju? Love it. Very,
okay.
very up for a soju. Soju and a beer and a Korean barbecue. Sounds like a very nice time.
It's a great time indeed. Is there a region of the world where you don't yet have students, and you're like, a diverse school needs to make sure we have full diversity? So we're looking for South America, we're looking for Australia, Oceania, we're looking for, Central Asia. What is that region that you're recruiting in that you're really tasked to do? Yeah,
like Australia, Oceania. We haven't had anybody from that region yet.
Yeah.
So that, I would say that, that's the region that we haven't had anybody from. Everywhere else, we're kind of covered.
I mean, the flight is from Oceania to Bilbao is going to take a chunk of that tuition fee too.
Yeah, and it's very long, long for the students.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Our time is up.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and I really appreciate the insight here. At least one student came to mind for me from my current location, but definitely will share this information not just with my colleagues at Aiglon, but also friends and colleagues around the world. Do you have any questions about Aiglon College and our students, or are you pretty well?
At the moment, I think I'm pretty well versed. Yeah, not for the moment. I am going to have to leave you, unfortunately, because I do have another appointment.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's not brutal. Alice, it was great. Thank you for being up early, and enjoy the rest of your week and your holidays.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me, and for all of your insightful questions that I'm sure your students and the parents of your students would be very interested in knowing. You know them best. So thank you so much.
Well, as we unleash the norms, we continue to explore opportunities. So thank you, Alice. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Speak to you soon.
See you.